Alrighty, everybody. We're not doing the standard intro this time because right now I am just working on making sure that this looks okay. Alright, so YouTube video doesn't look bad. Nobody's watching. So yeah, I have nobody watching. Alright, so I hate to do this, but I'm gonna have to unmute my YouTube and it's gonna echo for a second. Okie dokie. That's not super duper terrible. Sounds halfway decent. It might be kind of quiet though. Again, we will find out. Oh, we do have somebody watching. Excellent. So that person can tell me if I am too loud or too quiet, or if there's anything wrong with like my camera or anything like that. So until we get that kind of information, and until we're sure that this is running correctly, I'm just kind of gonna wait, and this part will actually be edited out of the video when it goes onto the video thing, the YouTubes, whatever. So hopefully in a minute we will have the information that lets us know that you know, nothing is terrible or anything like that, or that, you know, everything's exploding. Hopefully everything sounds good. Ugh. That's weird. I always wondered if I could see people watching. I can see that there is one person watching, but I can't see who it is. Huh. Go figure. I wonder if that's me. I don't think it is. But it might be. We'll find out if somebody posts something in chat. I'm going to give this exactly 6 minutes. And if we don't hear anything to let us know that bad things are happening or anything like that, or that it looks bad or anything like that, I will go ahead and begin the channel. And then this will all vanish into the ether, you know, not long after this video is completed. So, you know, hopefully that'll be a thing. At some point I would like to get a nicer camera, a better microphone, things like that. Those are less important to me right now than creating content. Hey Google, turn off the timer. I'm less interested in making my videos 4K and more interested in actually creating videos. So, you know, I understand that there are people who are gonna see my videos and go, well, this isn't high quality, I don't watch. Well, that sucks, but, you know, I'm more interested in creating these videos just to get the information out there. It's a shame that, apart from whoever is watching this right now, that no one else is probably ever going to hear any of this. Yeah, that's the thing. Oh. Just waiting for now. But yeah, if anybody's out there, let me know on chat. If you have any questions, let me know. Look at that. It actually popped up on my phone that I am live. We get about 30 more seconds before we go anywhere with this. This is probably ready to go. Bit hot. Blowing stuff into the camera today. That's no fun. Alright. We will go ahead and adjust this. And then we will go ahead and start. Hey everyone, I'm Fluffy. Welcome back to Fluffy Talks Tabletop. Today we're going to talk about NPC construction and what you can do to make your life easier or miserably hard, depending on which choices you make. So, especially in World of Darkness, there are a lot of like random background NPCs that don't do anything and just kind of stand there or walk around, or, you know, they're just there because I'm not going to put, you know, only the person you need to talk to and the PCs in the bar at the same time. There are going to be other people in there. So, you know, these people, NPCs range from all the way to, I saw him from across the room, I don't know what he looks like, I just know that there is a person there, all the way up to fully interactable, fully, like, has combat stats, has a full character sheet, and even earns experience points and things like that. So we're going to kind of run that gauntlet today as to all of the things that I use for my NPC construction, and kind of what I do to build NPCs and how I do it quickly, just off the bat at tables and things like that, if I'm running at a con or running a pickup or anything like that. So the first big thing when it comes to NPC creation is to go ahead and find out what races are going to be playing, or what races are going to be playable by NPCs. And I don't mean, like, races. I mean, like, are you running elves, dwarves, things like that? Once you've decided that, go ahead and get, like, one page, or if you're using a computer, create, like, a new page for each race. Actually, create 2 new pages for each race, one male, one female. You could also create a 3rd page if you want specifically gender ambiguous names. So what we're doing here is we're going to build a list of names. And this is really important so that when a PC says, wait, what was that guy's name? You don't have to go, I don't know. This way you have a reference document to look this kind of stuff up. If you have a name generator, some people like to use name generators. If you're going to do that, generate a whole bunch beforehand so that you can just pick off of a list and just cross it out once you've used it. You know, this guy's name is Aladar. That he's an elf. That's what you need to know. Cross that name off. You've used it. This way you don't accidentally name 2 NPCs the same thing unless you're intending to do that, in which case you already have a list of the ones that you've used, and most people can read through a simple straight line cross out. So that's not terrible. The other thing that you should do is kind of like sit down and think about what traits kind of define these races for you. Obviously, we can spot an elf or a dwarf or anything like that, but if there are other races, like the Feyri or anything like that, which that's a Faerun race, I'm not grossly mispronouncing fairy, but knowing what physical descriptors you can use to tell someone what race an NPC is without having to just straight up say it, that can make your life a little easier. So I like to write those at the top of the page. For example, shades normally have human names, but so I don't have a separate list for that, but I will write up at the top for my list of names, shades cast no shadow, because that's a very easy way to identify a shade on the street as long as they're not using magic to replicate a shadow. That's one of my World of Darkness races, is the shade. Hi, Sam. So there's a lot of different descriptions for a lot of different races that I use, and I try and keep those on hand so I don't have to say, this person is a Nyx, or this person is an Onairi, or anything like that. I can just say, this person has, reddish-brown skin with, red leaves for hair, and they're like, oh, that's an Onaira. That's no problem. And also, this kind of makes it so that the players that have actually read the race sheets and know their races better can pick these things out, and the people that don't are going to have to roll for it. Or the people that actually know the answer are going to be able to tell them without you having to say, we'll make a roll for it, so you don't interrupt game or anything like that. So that makes life a little easier. The other thing is have a spare sheet of paper where you can write down all of the NPCs that you build in that game so that you don't accidentally confuse them for other people. It really sucks to have one of your NPCs murdered by PCs because they thought he was someone else because you used the wrong name. So that's another big one, is make sure that you do not confuse one NPC for another. Write stuff down. It's important. I kind of categorize my NPCs into 3 sort of upgradable categories. I'll start with the base category, which are I call them momentaries. They're kind of like extras in a movie. They usually exist for either one scene or they're in the background all the time, and you never interact with them or anything like that. For example, bar patrons that aren't the people your PCs need to talk to are momentaries. If they are on a college campus, the students that they are not interacting with, despite the fact that they are persistent, are kind of momentary NPCs because they don't need to know anything about them, maybe a basic description. So when it comes to momentaries, I like to have a physical description that usually includes one interesting thing that the players can see or hear or otherwise determine from a distance. But you have to be really careful about that, because if you make an NPC interesting, the PCs are probably going to talk to them, and then you end up having to upgrade your momentaries to what I call interactables. Now, sometimes momentaries are interacted with, but sometimes, or usually in this case, it's one time and only one time. For example, the PCs travel to a different city that they're probably not going to come back to. We don't need a full character sheet for the bartender at the bar. We just need a basic physical description, maybe a name, and that's kind of about it. Maybe he has a tattoo or something like that. Maybe his job is to show that the area is under the control of a particular merchant group, and he has a tattoo on the back of his hand or on his wrist or maybe even on the back of his neck that that show that he is part of this group. Now, if the PCs are trying to figure out what's going on with this merchant group, maybe they're corrupt or something like that, maybe this bartender doesn't know anything. And he could have a couple of dialogue lines where the PCs ask him if he knows anything and he doesn't, and this kind of leaves him in the momentary category. The PCs probably aren't going to interact with this person a second time, except maybe to buy drinks later that day, or some other day of the week, and then eventually leave the town. Momentaries are usually not even seen or not even interacted with, and there's kind of a running joke in the TV series Ruby where the background momentaries are just silhouettes or unfleshed out characters, and I kind of like the way that looks from a narrative perspective, in that, you know, you don't know what these people look like because you're not looking. Now, obviously, we as the viewers can see these people, but they are inconsequential to the story, and they're completely non-interactive with the rest of the PCs, in this case the characters, and as such they don't even have physical descriptions. But in the event that somebody sees one or has to talk to one, you can throw a physical description on there. And a great use of momentaries is to give the PCs the feeling that they've accomplished something by throwing a couple red herring momentaries in to make PCs not exactly sure what NPC they're looking for. For example, maybe you're going to go see a guy named Virgil at a bar. You know that he's a lawyer and that he's got long black hair. That should make him pretty easy to spot, right? So you walk into the bar, and there's 3 people with long black hair. One of them has his black hair up in a braid. He's wearing a leather motorcycle jacket and heavy dark pants. The next guy is kind of black shaggy hair. He's wearing a t-shirt with a metal band on it and jeans. And the third guy is up at the bar. He's wearing a gray dress shirt with a black tie, black dress slacks, and there's a suit coat draped over the back. Well, that one's probably Virgil. Probably. But he could be any of those 3 that you want. And by allowing the PCs to actually figure out which one is which, that kind of allows a more organic introduction to an NPC than just, you see Virgil, he's sitting at the bar. That momentary, well, maybe this isn't him. Let's find out anyway. That gives the PC something to do instead of something to hear. And this is really part of the final point of my, presentation today, which is show, don't tell. We'll talk about that a lot later. Now, sometimes you end up with NPCs that are in the category I've mentioned before, the interactables. Interactable NPCs have a little bit more fleshing out than momentaries do. You've got, your general description, their name. This is the one that I really like to throw, some interesting thing about them that the PCs will notice immediately. Maybe they have brightly dyed hair or something like that. Maybe their voice is much higher or much lower than they think, or than the PCs think that it might be based on their appearance. Maybe they're the only one who's low-key carrying a weapon and the PCs just happen to notice. Things like that make for an interesting NPC and can differentiate one of your interactable NPCs from one of your basic momentary NPCs. Now, through most of the role-playing games that I've played, I have found that this interactable category of NPCs is the most common among DMs and GMs and whatnot that don't build character sheets for every single person, and that's tiresome. That's the kind of thing I was talking about earlier when I said making your life completely difficult when it comes to building NPCs. You don't need to build character sheets for everybody. There are ways to do it without that. And really, the big one is interactables. Write down your information for them. Make sure that you get their name, their physical description, the kind of clothes that they're wearing. Note what kind of clothes they normally wear, so if the PCs see them again, you can have them have a change of clothes. These NPCs, they talk, they do stuff. They don't have full character sheets, but sometimes they actually do things. And in this instance, you kind of have to be a little, I don't want to say fudgy, but you kind of have to, you know, not guess, but make educated decisions as to what dice they're going to throw and things like that. For example, maybe they've ran into Kiara, who's an NPC in one of my games. Kiara has the ability, she's an interactable, but she has the ability to see through magic that disguises people and hides what supernatural race they might be, but it sometimes requires a roll. So if they do have things like that, make sure you notate that. For example, she gets 6 dice to do that because she has 3 dots in the power and 3 perception, which is how that particular power is rolled. So I know that she has 3 perception, so I'm going to write that down. I know she's got 3 dots in the power, so I'm going to write that down. But she doesn't have a full character sheet or anything like that. Admittedly, though, the PCs are interacting with her a lot, and it might be time to make one. Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to blow that at you. It's supposed to be blowing on the other side. The third type is the full NPC. This one has a full character sheet and sometimes even gains experience points. And ends up leveling up and stuff like that. These are built using whatever standard system that you're using, and you can build them slightly weaker or slightly stronger than PCs, or much stronger or much weaker depending on what the situation calls for. Maybe you want an NPC to be very scary. Maybe he is a vampire that owns a nightclub or something like that, and you need him to have a lot of dots in, like, Dominate, so that he can manipulate the memories of other people, so that when the PCs accidentally out themselves by doing the thing PCs do, which is talk about, you know, state secrets and crap like that at a crowded bar, that NPC can be like, hey, you can't talk about that here. Now I have to erase these 2 people's memories. And now you've got a full NPC interacting with momentaries, which is kind of hilarious. Which brings me to another thing. Try not to end up playing the hat game. And the hat game is where the dungeon master or storyteller or whatever is playing multiple NPCs at the same time that are talking to each other. We call it the hat game because in one of the live action roleplays that I do, where I was introduced to the concept of the hat game, the person playing both NPCs had 2 different hats, and they would switch hats between the 2. And that kind of ran the joke as the hat game. It probably comes from somewhere else, but I've always heard it as the hat game, and I know it because of that particular instance. So, the real big thing when it comes to introducing NPCs to your party is show, don't tell. I'm going to give 2 introductions for the same NPC. One of them is going to be all telling, the other one is going to be showing as much as possible. This NPC's name is Terry. So, you guys already know her name is Terry, but the PCs are also aware of this. They are in a car, and they are headed to go pick up Terry because the driver is, you know, Terry's girlfriend and is picking up Terry from her job at the night court. These are things that the PCs know, so I'm telling you this now. So when the PCs get there, I can say, all right, you see Terry walking out of the courtroom building. She's wearing a white shirt, black tie, black slacks, black suit coat, and, you know, as she's walking over, she is taking her suit coat off. She's about 5'7", 5'8", and doesn't cast any kind of shadow, which, if you remember earlier, makes her a shade. She's got mid-length, dark brown hair, and she's relatively pale, but not excessively, not like dead pale, not to the point of a vampire or anything like that. So now we have a kind of general description of the character, but there were a couple other ways to do this. Instead of telling you how tall she is, which can be difficult to eyeball, you can just mention that she is a little over average height and have her duck down when she gets in the car, or have her walk by something that the PCs know has a particular height and mention that she's taller than that. One of the other characters, Alice, is like 6'4" because she wears like 3-inch platforms, so she's 6'1", and I made it a point that she had to duck through a 6-foot doorway. So that was a way to show really how tall she was without having to say she is 6'4". Another thing that I like to do for PCs or for NPCs is I told everyone that she doesn't cast a shadow. I could have made them roll perception to notice that, or spot, or whatever system you're using. I could have made them roll for that, but that breaks the flow a little bit, in my opinion, and they're kind of bound to notice at some point that she isn't casting a shadow. But a way to do this so that you're really not requiring a roll at all would be to have Alice, in this case, comment on the fact that she's not casting a shadow. So Terry walks up the car and Alice says, Terry, honey, you're not casting a shadow. You gotta remember to put that up or someone's gonna catch you. And that is a good use of a mechanic or some NPC interaction that shows instead of tells. The other thing is, don't get bogged down in your descriptions. You want them short, sweet, and simple. You know, what clothes are they wearing? Are they above or below average height? Are they greatly above or below average height? What color is their hair? Can the PCs see their eye color from here? Is it noticeable? Is that important? You know, is the fact that they have bright gold irises important to the story? Is it important to what the PCs are doing? Is it important to know for the character? Things like this are things that you could choose to tell or show, or omit entirely from the description to make your introduction shorter. You know, if you sit there and describe every single piece of armor or, you know, high dollar outfit that your character is, or that your NPC is wearing, you know, you're gonna end up spending an hour and a half in your game, depending on how long your game is, just describing NPCs. You know, try and get that short and sweet and things like that. For example, Alice wears like black and usually black and purple, or black and red, or black and green plaid skirts. That is an easy way to say that, instead of saying she's wearing a skirt, it comes to just below her knees. It's got black, white, and green plaid on it. That's, you know, try and keep it short. There's no need to sit there and describe the whole character. Especially if you can have a character show or do something that interacts with something you haven't talked about. For example, mentioning that Alice is wearing a knee-length miniskirt without telling you what color or design it is fine. And then, like, having her sit down and straighten her black and green plaid miniskirt, that's another opportunity without having to break flow to give more description for the character. Also, Alice has really pointy teeth. All of them. But PCs wouldn't normally see this unless Alice is smiling at them. So, waiting for Alice to smile before she... My lights are dimming. Before you give the description of her teeth is a great way to do that. Oh, my lights are turning funny colors. Why are all of my lights turning funny colors? Hey Google, turn all the lights white.
Sure, changing 7 lights to white.
Hey Google, set all the lights to 100%.
Sure, setting
There we go.
7 lights brightness to
Okay,
100%.
hopefully it won't do that anymore. I'm sorry about that. But having parts of a character be hidden or not directly visible, and then showing them through some sort of action is, that's another way to do that. Fantastic example, in one of my campaigns, I had a character who had a mark on her body that showed that she was under the influence of a greater power. But that mark was on her shoulder. That's not something that's going to come up in conversation because she's not going to be pulling up her sleeves, but later on, when they see her at a nightclub and she's wearing a sleeveless dress, that is a perfect time to point out the mark, which is what ended up happening. So by breaking up your description, you can stop breaking up your flow and keep your game running. So NPC interaction is an important thing in your games, and knowing how your NPCs are going to interact with the PCs or other NPCs or other local powers and things like that is really important. For example, our bartender from earlier with the Merchant's Guild tattoo. Is he directly under their control? Does he work for them because he wants to? Is he paid off? Does he know something about the Merchant's Guild that he's not saying? Is he now an interactable NPC? Is he distrustful of that particular group? Would he be willing to share that information with a group of people he might think could take them down? Or is he getting paid handsomely to keep something like that quiet and would require even more money from the PCs, or even not say it at all? These kind of interactions are the important backbone to how an NPC interacts with PCs and NPCs. So by knowing where their allegiances are, you can build an NPC that has a personality. There's a lot of ways to kind of decide how you're going to do this, but the general idea, or the way that I do it, is by using a concept called allegiances. And if you've played D20 Modern, you're probably familiar with allegiances. But what I do for my NPCs that are going to be interactable and are going to interact with PCs on a regular basis, I decide what's important to that NPC. Is their allegiance to their self greater than their allegiance to other people? Is their allegiance to the group that they belong to greater than their allegiance to themselves? Is it greater than their allegiance to random strangers? Things like that. Are they specifically big on local law? Do they believe that the local law or local law enforcement is a good and righteous, just group, or are they distrustful of groups like that? By building these allegiances and ranking them either equal to, less than, or greater than other allegiances, I can decide quickly and easily how an NPC is going to interact with anybody else in the immediate area just by having that list. So by just writing down a short list of things that NPC values or doesn't value, you can build a really good personality for that NPC. For example, our bartender from earlier, I'm going to keep coming back to him. In this case, we're going to say that he is part of the group controlled by the Merchant's Guild, but isn't in the Merchant's Guild. He's still required to get the tattoo to indicate that he is that he is being paid by them, but he's not being paid that much, but it is a regular stipend. If the PCs could front him a little bit of cash, he might be able to escape town before he gets in a lot of trouble, get somewhere else, maybe even have the tattoo removed, and continue on with his life out from under the thumb of this Merchant's Guild. But what is something like that going to cost? And a big thing here is, how important is that tattoo? Is he going to need money to have that magically removed, or physically removed? Does he need it covered up? Anything like that? That kind of information changes how much money the PCs would need to bribe this NPC into giving them the information that they need. Let's take a second case with the same bartender. He is actually part of the Merchants Guild and would never betray them. Regardless of how much money the NPCs try for or what kind of interaction they attempt to make with this NPC, they're not going to make any headway. They're going to end up trying to find someone else to talk to, and the downside is now they know that someone knows they're in town. By making that distinction early and maybe even letting the PCs off the hook this time, whereas they're not going to be turned into the Merchants Guild, you might be able to let them get away with interrogating one other person, maybe two, before the Merchants Guild actually comes down on them and they all die. So that might be a very important thing. So whereas this bartender is part of the Merchants Guild, maybe he has family that's nearby and doesn't get to see them. Maybe the PCs could check on his family for him and he won't say anything to the Merchants Guild about them being in town. Maybe his allegiance to his family is higher than his allegiance to his guild. This is the kind of stuff that allows you to build NPCs that can actually interact with PCs in a meaningful way. Another example of this, in one of my games at Scarab, the NPCs, or the PCs, ended up, that's really confusing today apparently, the PCs ended up in a place that they had never been to, that probably no one had been to in quite a while except for a small handful of mages. And they ran into a mage there. Well, that mage doesn't really care for other people. He has no problem giving away information, but he's probably not going to help the PCs in any way that doesn't or that detracts from what he's doing, which is exactly what ended up happening. He was able to walk the PCs to where they were going, but he couldn't stick around to help because it's not part of his character. His allegiance to what he is currently working on is greater than his allegiance to random strangers. Now, if they had helped him out or bribed him or something like that, or offered something in exchange, he might have been more apt to help them because he's always looking for things that will help him with what he's doing. And if, let's say that that's a magical research project, maybe he has a family member or a friend that's trapped in an alternate dimension. He's currently trying to figure out how to get there. If the PCs had any information about that, they might be able to coerce him into helping them out past what they were doing because they've made their this NPC's time with them more important than what he was working on. So that brings me to one other point, and that is interacting with NPCs. If you are playing a PC and you are interacting with an NPC, you know, you can try the old, what can I do for you? You know, what is it worth for me to do that will allow you to, or get you to help us, things like that. And this is kind of how all NPC interactions go, unless that NPC is already decided to help the PCs, in which case what they have to do is nothing. So when dealing with NPCs, the trade-off is, what do I need to do versus what do you want or need or have that I can use? And knowing that and actually asking NPCs, you know, are you very dedicated to this Merchants Guild, things like that. You have to be careful with questions like these because they can get you into trouble, but the information that you gain might help you work with an NPC more than what you would normally get. So by building an NPC that is interactable with their own allegiances and their own ideals and things like that, and by showing instead of telling, you can create a more immersive world for your PCs to play in. And that's really what all these videos are about, now that I think about it, is trying to build the most immersive world possible. You know, what can you as the storyteller or GM or Dungeon Master do to make this world as truly alive as you can. And by populating it with NPCs who have their own allegiances and alliances and motives and ideals, you can really immerse your characters more than just having good descriptions of backdrops and things like that. Yeah, a good description for a downtown area is nice, but having nothing to interact with in there is a little, immersion breaking. And having every single NPC that the PCs ever run into immediately help them for no apparent reason is also a little immersion breaking, because it's kind of surreal. Now, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it's a small demiplane, and, they helped a denizen of that demiplane on the PC's home plane, and he went back, and now now the PCs have gone to that demiplane, and everyone is happy that their prince or king has been returned to them, and they will help the PCs. But again, there are things that are more important. For example, an NPC in this instance probably would not burn down their own house just because a PC asked them to. These allegiances are really important to your character. I know I've kind of prattled on about that a lot, but the most immersive thing that you can do for an NPC is have them have their own motives and ideals. That stuff is important. So I don't really know what else to talk about, so I'm going to kind of wrap up the video here. But the basics here is keep lists so that you can pull information quickly, write down everything that you create for an NPC in the event that the PCs run into them again, and make sure that these NPCs have allegiances and motives and morals that aren't always the same, so that PCs will have a unique interaction with every NPC you create. This is the way to build immersive worlds, is by having immersive characters to talk to. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Fluffy Talks Tabletop. If you have any questions or anything like that, or content that you want to see, please let us know in the comments. Let us know in some way. There's a lot of stuff that I really want to get through on this channel. Soon we're going to do an episode on how to be I'm going to say a good GM, like some of the things that you can do, and a lot of it is going to be rehashing stuff like this, like, having good NPCs and stuff like that, but I want to try and steer kind of clear of that and talk about like decisions that you can make and stuff like that. So hopefully that one will also be an enjoyable and interesting video. But again, if you have anything that you want to see, please let us know. I try and make these videos as interesting as possible to people. I know I don't really have the best recording or camera equipment or anything like that, so please, I apologize for that now. I'd like to get better equipment, but if this gets off the ground, we will end up with better equipment and stuff like that. If it doesn't, and it's just me sitting here making these videos, we probably won't increase the camera or microphone quality or anything like that. But seriously, it's always nice to see that people have watched these videos, and thank you for watching them and for letting me know if there's stuff that you want to see. That stuff is really important to me because it allows me to create content for people. Again, thanks for watching, and we will catch you guys later.